Part 20. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 191. Everything Kuerha said was right. Fu Kang lowered his eyebrows and thought, so it turns out that he likes this feeling. Does he like his master? Probably so. He likes to stay with his master all the time, likes to eat at the same table with his master, and likes to listen to his master talk, even if he just tells him to do things, he also likes it. He also likes to chat with his master and play chess with him. Even if he gets slapped on the palm because he is too stupid, he still feels very happy. Well, he prefers to sleep in the same bed with his master every night, sniffing the familiar scent and falling asleep. At that moment, he is very close to his master, a chance that no one else has, only the personal bodyguard can do it. But it seems to be a treasonous thing for the shadow guard to like his master. According to the rules, he should be subjected to the most severe punishment and serve for 7 or 49 days until he breathes his last breath. Chu Qinghuang's hand holding the teacup tightened slightly, and she raised her eyes to look at Fu Kang, who was in torment in front of her, and couldn't help but think deeply. Torture for 77 and 49 days? Who set these rules? Killing can only be done with a nod of the head. If a heinous crime is really committed, the punishment will be harsher. Just because you like someone, you have to be tortured? Chu Qinghuang was silent for a long time. Seeing that Fu Kang had been immersed in his own thoughts, he couldn't help but knock on the table. Do you still want to eat? Fu Kang raised his eyes, and his tone sounded much calmer. This subordinate has eaten enough. Are you full? Chu Qinghuang stood up. Let's go to the military camp. Yes. Fu Kang stood up and followed Chu Qinghuang. He couldn't help but think about what Hong Yu said just now. If you really like me, then like me well and don't change your mind easily. Chu Qinghuang glanced at him and said, don't like other women again. Fu Kang lowered his head. I don't know how to do that. Chu Qinghuang seemed to want to say something more, but she seemed to have nothing to say. She was not a woman immersed in love, and she had no special feelings about Fu Kang liking her. It seemed to be natural. Well, I seem to be in a good mood. He is her shadow guard. It is a natural thing to obey her, be loyal to her, and then fall in love with her. Although the shadow guard cannot have feelings, having feelings is not necessarily a bad thing. After all, after liking her, he will be more loyal and obedient without distraction. Loyalty will break away from the constraints of rules and become willing. This feeling should be pretty good. Chu Qinghuang thought, stopped, and turned to look at him. Fu Kang. Yes. If one day in the future, you fall in love with another woman. With a bang, Fu Kang knelt down and said with a bit of panic, I don't know how to do it. Chu Qinghuang frowned, I didn't ask you to kneel. Yes. Fu Kang pursed his lips, lowered his head and stood up, his voice lowered, this subordinate will not fall in love with another woman. I'm talking about what ifs. Chu Qing looked at him expressionlessly, but as long as the premise of this what if doesn't happen, and you don't have any dissatisfaction with me, and our identities and positions change, the palace can promise to stay with you forever, so you don't have to think too much. Fu Kang was slightly shaken. Forever. But the master will still get married in the future. Once he has a consort, won't the master think his existence is redundant? There will be no consort in this palace. Chu Qinghuang said lightly, you don't have to worry. Well? Fu Kang suddenly raised his eyes. Did the master hear what he was saying? Your emotions are all written on your face. It's not difficult for me to guess. Chu Qinghuang remained calm and breathless. After speaking, she raised her hand and pinched his face. You don't have to worry about other people in the future. What people say is random. If I say I want you, I will always want you. If I say it's in compliance with the rules, then it's in compliance with the rules. It doesn't matter what others say. Hearing this, Fukang seemed to calm down for a moment. He looked at Chu Qing Huang meekly, as if all the surrounding scenery had disappeared, and his eyes could only hold the noble, cold, and gentle woman in front of him. Yes, he nodded slowly, his eyebrows lowered. It doesn't matter what others say, Fukang only listens to the master. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 192. Chu Qing Huang watched his docile look quietly, and suddenly reached out and touched his head. Be good. Fukang froze. The surprise fell from the sky. Before he could react, Chu Qing Huang had already retracted his hand, turned around and walked out. Go to the military camp. Fukang raised his eyes to look at her, stood alone for a moment, and then followed her. The heartbeat seems a little fast. Fukang gently touched his heart, suppressed his throbbing, walked out of the door as if nothing had happened, and looked up at Chu Qing Huang, who was getting on his horse. The master's heroic appearance and extraordinary bearing impressed him everywhere. Why are you still standing there? Chu Qing Huang sat on the horse, looking down at him with a smile hidden in his eyes. Are you impressed by my magnanimity? Fukang met her teasing eyes, his handsome face warmed slightly, and he quickly apologized and got on his horse. Chu Qing Huang flicked the reins lightly. Drive. The two horses left one after the other. No matter whether Chu Qing Huang's speed was fast or slow, the black horse was always one step behind and never surpassed its master by half a step. At this time, in the flower hall by the lake in the west courtyard of the eldest princess's mansion, Hong Yu leaned against the beauty lazily, with a melancholy look on his face. Alas, my royal highness, who is as beautiful as a flower, loved by everyone, and whose flowers are in full bloom, seems to be about to be raped by a wolf. The kid took it away. Zhong Jin raised his feet and said, you are worrying unfoundedly. You have to trust my intuition. Hong Yu pointed to his head. All of you combined are not as good as me. Intuition. Wen Zhan held the scroll in his hand and spoke politely. Didn't you calculate it in advance? Hong Yu was silent for a moment, holding her chin up and looking at the book in Wen Zhan's hand, thinking thoughtfully. Master Wen wants to take the first prize. Yes, it must be the top pick. Wen Zhan nodded. Otherwise, I will be sorry for the opportunity His Highness gave me. He did not forget that the opportunity for him to participate in the scientific examination was obtained by the eldest princess in exchange for his position as Minister of the Ministry of Finance. If he did not get the rank of number 1, he would be sorry for the nurturing kindness of the eldest princess. What if I fail the exam? Wen Zhan raised his head when he heard this. I never thought about this. You can think about it now. Wen Zhan pondered. Apologize with death. There's no point in apologizing to death. Hong Yu coughed lightly. Well, if you don't get the top prize, you can just be willing to listen to the orders of the four of us for a month. As soon as he said this, Zhong Jin and Chu Ling Chuan turned their heads and looked over at the same time. Wen Zhan's mouth twitched slightly. 4 people working together. Of course not, Hong Yu said calmly. Everyone is in charge for a month. Chu Ling Chuan seemed to be very interested in this proposal, and there was some expectation on his expression. I heard that Mr. Wen is not only good at learning, but also proficient in arithmetic. It just so happened that during this period, I accumulated a lot of account books and didn't read them, and I was worried about the lack of manpower. Woolen cloth. Do you want to read the ledger? Hong Yu's eyes lit up and he pointed at Wen Zhan and Shen Kongjin. Young Master Chu has really found the right person. These two are masters at reading ledgers and will definitely listen to Chu Lingchuan's orders. Zongjin. Wen Zhan. If they throw Hong Yu into the lake, I wonder if His Highness will punish them. You don't have to look at me like that. Hong Yu curled her lips. It's not certain whether Mr. Chu can like you. If you can really win Mr. Chu's favor and have the qualifications to take care of his books, you can sleep at night. It's time to smile, but you still act like you're forced to accept guests. Don't you think it's hypocritical? After the words fell, the atmosphere couldn't help but be a little subtle. Although several people present had known Chu Lingchuan's identity for a long time, they had never made it clear. Today, they had a half-day of leisure. Well, it should be said that the young masters who lived as carefree as gods every day gathered together again. All the while, I couldn't hold my tongue while talking. There was a gentle smile on Chu Lingchuan's face, and his eyes were clearly understanding, but he was always calm and harmless. The silence lasted for a long time. It was Qi Ling who finally broke the silence. I'm afraid there won't be many leisurely and comfortable days like today. As he finished speaking, several pairs of eyes fell on his face. King Zhenbei is here. His Highness wants me to take charge of King Zhenbei's fiefdom and military power. In this case, there will inevitably be a war between me and Qi Yun, the legitimate son of King Zhenbei. Qi Ling didn't know if he was being manipulated by Hong Yu. Infected with melancholy, he sighed faintly. A handsome young man like me who is independent from the world, indifferent to fame and wealth, and just wants to live a life of leisurely clouds and wild cranes, I'm afraid I will be forced to show some edge. After saying this sentence, the effect was immediate. The expressions of the four people in front of them were all expressions of contempt and ridicule. Aloof from the world. Indifferent to fame and fortune. Xianyun Yehi. Handsome young master. Qi Ling frowned. What are your expressions? The four of them were silent for a while, and then Chu Lingchuan returned to the topic seriously. Her Royal Highness, the eldest princess, has a noble status, powerful abilities and a beautiful appearance, which is not suitable for Fukang's status. Zhong Zongjin nodded. It's normal for Fukang to like Her Highness the princess. After all, you just said that Her Highness has a noble status, powerful abilities and is dazzling at first sight. It's normal for any man to like His Highness, but it's not anyone can deserve it. Yes, Wen Zhan nodded in agreement. Feng Jinzi's fate serves as a lesson to others. Qi Ling frowned and looked at him. Although I also feel that Fukang's status is not suitable for His Highness, it is a bit inappropriate to compare him with someone like Feng Jinzi. Wen Zhan said, that's right. At least he is better than Feng Jinzi, can protect His Highness, and works for His Highness loyally. He never said a word when he was beaten, punished and tortured, unlike Feng Jinzi who only cried. Hong Yu added, and he is also better looking than Feng Jinzi. Others nodded, that's true. What's the point of you saying so much? Hong Yu snorted. If His Highness likes him, it won't help even if you say 100 reasons why he is not worthy of her. As soon as these words came out, the hall was instantly as quiet as snow. That's true. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 193. Shen Zongjin said calmly, so does His Highness like him or not? Hong Yu looked unfathomable. His Highness is extremely powerful, and her ambition is the most important goal in her life. Feelings are just the icing on the cake. Like or not is not important at all. This is just your sour words because you failed to win favor. Wen Zhan smiled softly. Hong Yu frowned. Did you succeed? Wen Zhan choked, then picked up the book in his hand and showed it to him. My son's studies are the most important thing recently. Hong Yu sneered. Hypocrisy. Hong Yu Chu Lingchuan's eyes fell on his face. Fukang and His Highness. Hong Yu coughed lightly. Don't ask me, I don't know anything. Mr. Hong Yu is a prophet, how could he not know anything? Qi Ling said in a light tone. Just tell us directly, is there any possibility between Fukang and His Highness? The secret of heaven cannot be revealed. Hong Yu stood up and looked at several people with unkind eyes. Don't always try to trick me. Disclosing the secret of heaven without authorization will be punished by heaven. This young man is beautiful and kind, in the prime of life, and plans to live a long life. 4 pairs of eyes despised him at the same time. Let's go. Chu-Ling Chuan stood up. You guys are idle anyway, I'll find something for you to do. There's still work to do in the barracks, I have to rush over to supervise the training. Chi-Ling stood up and said, although the Silver Armor Army has been much more obedient recently, I still have to go over at any time to see if anyone is lazy. I won't chat with Master Chu anymore, goodbye. Hong Yu frowned and thought for a while. Your Highness's red Luen star is moving, I have to go and tell your fortune to see if there will be any changes. As he said, he looked at Wen Zhan and Shen Kongjin with an innocent face. If Master Wen and Master Shen have nothing to do, then dash. It's already June now, and the autumn examination will start in 3 months. I have to hurry back to my room to review my lessons. Wen Zhan stood up holding the scroll, looking apologetic. Master Shen is capable and should work harder. Maybe he can become Master Chu's right-hand man in the future. After saying that, he turned around and left leisurely. Shen Zongjin looked expressionlessly at the 3 people who were finding excuses to escape one after another. After a moment of silence, he turned to look at Chu-Ling Chuan, who was smiling warmly. Mr. Chu. Aren't you worried that we will report your identity to the court after we know it? Chu-Ling Chuan was surprised. Do you know my identity? Shen Zongjin nodded. What is my identity? Chu-Ling Chuan raised his lips slightly. Mr. Shen, do you have any evidence? Shen Kongjin was silent. It seems that there is really no evidence, but... Let's go. Chu-Ling Chuan turned and walked out of the flower hall. His figure was slender like jade, elegant and calm. Mr. Shen has no evidence to prove Chu's identity, but Chu knows Mr. Shen's details very well, so in the next 6 months, Mr. Shen, please cooperate with Chu to manage the accounts, especially the 2 months before the new year are very busy. Mr. Shen should get started on these matters earlier. Shen Kongjin followed him silently, walked for a long time, and then said faintly, actually, I don't want too much power. Chu-Ling Chuan turned his head and looked at him, smiling. This should not be your decision. Shen Kongjin was choked. Instantly. Stop. No one in this world can really do whatever they want. If you gain something, you must lose something. The rules are balanced and cannot be easily broken. Chu-Ling Chuan's voice is elegant and particularly comfortable to listen to. As a bastard of the Shen family, you have obtained wealth and relative freedom and power that you should not have with this identity, so you should pay for it with your own ability and all the time and energy that can be reasonably allocated within your ability, as well as all the reasonable arrangements imposed on you by the person who gave you all this. Shen Kongjin asked calmly, reasonable arrangements and arrangements. The reasonable standard should be set by me. Chu-Ling Chuan smiled slightly. Do you have any opinions? Shen Kongjin was silent for a moment, and slowly shook his head. No opinion. A man who knows the times is a hero. He fought against the smiling tiger in front of him because he thought his life was too long. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 194. Half a day passed quickly. For the Queen Mother, today was destined not to be a happy day. Even though today was her birthday. After the family banquet, the 3 princes took their leave first. The emperor chatted with the Queen Mother for a while, then returned to the Yugan Palace to review memorials and ordered the Queen and others to chat with the Queen Mother. In the evening, the Queen, Concubine Duan, Concubine Xian, and the 9 concubines stood up and took their leave one by one. When the Queen Mother was the only one left in Renshao Palace, she sat on the phoenix couch and ordered lightly, bring the little pet that the eldest princess presented today. The palace servant quickly brought the basket over, and moved carefully, as if afraid of waking up the sleeping pet. The Queen Mother silently stared at the snow-white little ball curled up on the silk cloth and sleeping, her eyebrows slightly deep. Feng Ping. Your servant is here. Do you think Tianyin's abnormal behavior today has something to do with this little pet? Feng Ping looked at the basket in surprise, and said solemnly, this is a little beast, It should have nothing to do with it, right? I also think it should have nothing to do with it. The Queen Mother frowned, but why is it such a coincidence? Even if Tianyin is unreliable, he shouldn't lose his composure in an occasion like today. Feng Ping was silent for a while. It's rare for the eldest princess to take the initiative to present gifts to the Queen Mother in so many years. It's originally a filial piety, but it's precisely because it's so rare that it's very likely to be used by others. The Queen Mother's face changed. Use. Yes, Feng Ping nodded. This kind of hand in the palace, this is not uncommon. The princess used to have a violent temper and never tried to please anyone, but this year she unusually presented a gift to the Empress Dowager. It is hard to guarantee that others will not take advantage of this opportunity to do something and then frame the princess. After hearing what he said, the Empress Dowager was enlightened. You mean, someone deliberately made Tianyin crazy? Yes, Feng Ping nodded slowly. I guess it is possible that someone deliberately chose to poison the third prince today, causing the third prince to behave violently and abnormally in front of the emperor. The emperor was furious and blamed him. Not only will the third prince be punished, but the Empress Dowager will also be the first to suspect the pet sent by the princess. The person behind the poisoning will not be affected at all, and may be complacent at this time. The Empress Dowager's face was gloomy and she was silent. Feng Ping was right. It is not uncommon for concubines in the palace to fight for power and profit. Who do you think it will be? It's hard to say. Feng Ping shook his head. His tone was extremely cautious. If we say that the most likely ones at the moment should be the queen and concubine Duan, but the queen doesn't seem to need to do so. Concubine Duan has fallen out of favor, and the imperial concubine is now in the Kingian palace. The queen and her son are currently in the upper hand and are almost certain to win. It is the best policy to keep calm at this time. With the queen's patience for so many years, she should not take such a big risk to frame the third prince. The Queen Mother's eyebrows were gloomy, so concubine Duan is the most likely. Feng Ping said, I am just guessing, I dare not conclude. The Queen Mother did not speak. Her eyes fell on the little pet sleeping on the blue silk cloth, slowly stroking his snow-white and soft hair, thinking deeply in her heart. Concubine Duan has fallen out of favor, but the emperor has not demoted her position, which means that the fifth prince Chu Tianzheng still has the qualifications to compete for the throne. Whether he can win is another matter, at least he does have the qualifications. It's not strange that concubine Duan wants to frame Tianyin. Besides, she doesn't love her daughter. Instead, she should hate her to the core because Chu Qinghuang destroyed the foundation of the Ling family by herself. Because of hatred, she wants revenge. It doesn't sound wrong. But the queen can't completely rule out suspicion. The Queen Mother is thinking about it and her head hurts. No matter whether it was the queen or concubine Duan who did it, there is no evidence to convict them for the time being. Whether Tianyin was poisoned or not, they have to send the imperial physician to check his pulse to confirm. If someone really poisoned him, this matter must be thoroughly investigated. Feng Ping, the Queen Mother, quickly ordered, go to the imperial hospital and ask Dr. Wang to go to the Prince of Jin's mansion in person, and check the third prince with Ade to see if there is anything wrong with his body. Yes. I'll go right away. That night, Chu Qinghuang, who had just finished her inspection of the military camp and returned to the princess mansion, had just finished her dinner when she heard Fu Kang's report, and her eyebrows raised slightly. The Queen Mother sent the doctor to the Prince of Jin's mansion. Yes. What did you find out? Fu Kang replied. After the reminder of the eunuchs around her, the Queen Mother naturally began to suspect that someone had poisoned her. During this period, unless Chu Qinghuang had other orders, Fu Feng, Fuyun, and the other four had been taking turns to keep an eye on the movements of the major palaces. Chu Tianyin was injured at noon and the doctor had treated his injury. There was a female doctor in the mansion to take care of him. Naturally, Fu Kang could not hide the fact that another doctor went to the Prince of Jin's mansion in the evening. Chu Qinghuang took a sip of tea. Renchao Palace eunuch Feng Ping. Yes. He is the Empress Dowager's confidant. Chu Qing Huang looked relaxed. The Empress Dowager will mostly believe what he says. After all, they are old people who have experienced the intrigues in the palace and survived by chance. They are naturally experienced and understand the means of competing for favor in the harem. Although what happened today has nothing to do with the competition for favor in the harem, it can't stop experienced people from thinking about it, right? After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 195. Chu Qing Huang sat leisurely for a while and said calmly, "Anyway, the palace has been quite lively these days. Some people like to sit on the mountain and watch tigers fight. I am also happy to watch tigers fight and see who can beat them." Who? If there was a fight in which both sides would suffer, it would save her the need to take action. Yes. Chu Qing Huang closed her eyes and pondered, secretly thinking about the reactions of the major palaces after King Zhenbei arrived in Beijing, as well as the countermeasures that the ministers of the aristocratic families who were ready to make a move would take, and ignored the rest for the moment. After a while, she realized belatedly that a burning gaze above her head enveloped her. Chu Qing Huang raised his eyes and looked at Fuekang. Fuekang quickly looked away as if he had been caught, and lowered his head in a respectful gesture. Chu Qing Huang raised his eyebrows. "Even if I am good looking, you don't need to peek so cautiously." Fuekang's lips tightened. "Subordinate." "I'm getting more and more courageous," Chu Qing Huang said in a calm tone. "How dare you peek at the beauty of this palace? What's the crime?" Chu Qing Huang found that the consequence of her indulging him was that this guy was getting more and more aggressive. As expected, human nature is to constantly test the bottom line. Shadow Guard is no exception. Fuekang originally wanted to kneel down and plead guilty, but although Chu Qing Huang's tone was serious and cold, the sentence "my palace is beautiful and beautiful" made him hear a bit of serious joking. Fuekang then lowered his head and said, "This subordinate has overstepped his bounds. If you offend your master, you should be punished." "What punishment?" Fuekang thought for a moment and said in a low voice, "Master was so noisy by Chu Tianyan today that I have a headache. Is this subordinate going to give you some massage?" Chu Qing Huang raised his eyebrows. "What kind of punishment is this?" Fuekang lowered his eyebrows and meekly said, "Master is a little fairy with a kind heart." "My subordinates, my subordinates." Chu Qing Huang's expression condensed, and his tone was cold and full of majesty. "Glib tongue, it is obvious that Hong Yu's mouth is not covered with honey, so do you have to imitate his sweet words?" "Yes." "I grant your request." "Yes." Fuekang felt relieved and walked behind Chu Qing Huang. He put his slender fingers on her temples and pressed them gently. Chu Qing Huang thought to herself, both she and Fuekang were obviously indifferent and taciturn, but their style of painting today didn't seem right. What went wrong? After thinking for a moment, she guessed that it might have something to do with their age. Although he was well trained, Fuekang was not very old after all. He was about the same as the peacocks in the backyard. The four of them chattered all day without any formality. In comparison, Fuekang was a little too indifferent. Well, a little change isn't such a bad thing. There was silence in the palace. Chu Qing Huang leaned on the brocade couch, closed her eyes and said lazily, "The massage is very comfortable. I will massage it for you every night from now on." Fuekang didn't get what he asked for, so he happily agreed, "Yes." Chu Qing Huang didn't say anything more. Time passed little by little. Under Fuekang's moderate pressure, she fell asleep without knowing it. Fuekang looked at her, hesitated for a long time, then slowly reached out to pick her up, turned around and walked into the inner hall, placing Chu Qing Huang on the bed very lightly. "I haven't taken a bath yet." Chu Qing Huang opened his eyes. "Go and prepare my pajamas." "Yes." Chu Qing Huang lay quietly on the bed, letting Fuekang do her work, and then she discovered that it felt really good to have such a person beside her. Although she is invincible outside, She is as docile as a cat in front of her. Emotions aside, this contrast can give people a strong sense of superiority, commonly known as vanity. Chu Qinghuang frowned, so she was also a vain woman? Fukang quickly prepared the essence that Chu Qinghuang would use for bathing and the pajamas he would wear afterwards, and informed Minjiao and Jinlan to wait in the bathing hall and come back to ask for instructions. Chu Qinghuang stood up to take a bath, and Fukang followed closely behind him. When Chu Qinghuang started to take off his clothes, he dodged his body and found a corner to stay. The purple smoke curtain in front of him blocked his sight, and Fukang was guarding against indecency. Don't ignore the rules, just listen with your ears to identify possible dangers. The bathing process was quiet. Chu Qinghuang leaned against the bathtub, enjoying the feeling of being wrapped in warm water and flower petals. The broccoli and the bright moon on the left and right were carefully taking care of her, and the fragrance lingered in the air. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 196. After bathing, he put on his pajamas and leaned against the bed. It was Fukang's bathing time. After she gave the order, not only did Fukang's diet and work schedule become more regular, but his habit of taking cold showers at night was also forcibly changed to warm water baths. And because he slept in the same bed with his master at night, Fukang would clean himself up every time before going to bed, and developed the habit of taking a bath every night. In the past, bathing was really not a problem for him due to the rules. A process that can be enjoyed often. The usual situation is that when there is dirt and blood stains, a bucket of cold water is poured over the head to wash away the blood stains. After changing into a set of clean clothes, the master must be hidden in any place where the master can be seen. The master should leave his sight, otherwise it would be a serious dereliction of duty. In recent times, he, the shadow guard, has been pampered like a noble prince. He can share the same table with his master, sleep on his soft bed, take warm baths, and wear clean clothes anytime and anywhere, and never again. He will not be blamed easily, because a trivial mistake will lead to cruel and inhuman punishment. His life changed drastically. And Fukang is beginning to get used to such changes. If one day he is brought back to his original shape, I wonder if he can still endure the previous lifestyle. The lights in the hall are soft. A crisp breath came to my face. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyes and looked at the young man who had returned from bathing. After bathing and before going to bed, Fukang looked the most docile and harmless. As long as there were no assassins or irrelevant people outside, all the sharp edges and corners on his body would be gone. It was so restrained that it looked like a beautiful and docile deer. I remember that your body will be very cold every night after you fall asleep, Chu Qinghuang said lightly. Why don't you feel like this before you fall asleep? Fukang knelt down on the bed and slowly shook his head. I don't know. Chu Qinghuang raised his hand to signal. Fukang was silent for a moment, then quietly moved forward. The bed was soft, and the kneeling posture had nothing to do with kneeling or not. It was just more convenient for talking to the master. Seeing that he was getting closer, Chu Qinghuang raised her hand to reach for his neck. Fukang remained in the kneeling position, but her body tensed instantly. Nervous, Chu Qinghuang stopped moving, her eyes falling on his face. Fukang was silent for a moment, then slowly shook his head. Don't be nervous. It's just a subconscious habit developed over the years, so you can't let people get close easily. But because this person is the master, so. Fukang forced himself to relax and lowered his eyebrows meekly. Chu Qinghuang raised his eyebrows, but without saying anything, he just put his fingers to his neck, and then slowly slid them down from his neck to the hem of his clothes. Fukang couldn't help but tensed up his body again, and the hairs all over his body stood up. The body is cold. Chu Ching Huang frowned. Although it is better than the cold body temperature after falling asleep, this cool feeling, did you use hot water or cold water to take a bath just now? Fucang replied, warm water. Chu Ching Huang stared at the tense handsome face casually, and even his Adam's apple couldn't help but roll because he was so nervous. Chu Ching Huang suddenly became playful, her slender hands were still close to his heart, and the heartbeat under her fingertips continued to intensify. Fu Kang's body became tighter and tighter, and his hands unconsciously tightened the quilt on both sides of his body. Shadow Guard's body is always on alert. It is the first time in his life that he is being brought so close to someone, even close to his heart. He is trying hard to restrain his body's subconscious reaction to fight back. And keep convincing myself to relax, relax. Why are you so nervous? Chu Ching Huang withdrew his hand and said in a calm voice, I won't eat you. Fu Kang lowered his head, his ears flushed. You must slowly get used to my behavior in the future, Chu Ching Huang said calmly, you are not allowed to resist. Fu Kang said, I don't dare. Chu Ching Huang hummed, go to sleep. Yes. Fu Kang clenched his hands carefully, controlled his heart that was still beating rapidly, and slowly lay down on the bed, letting his heartbeat calm down little by little. Chu Ching Huang looked at her fingertips and silently turned to look at Fu Kang, who was already lying down. I was not molesting you just now. Fu Kang stood up instantly. This subordinate's life belongs to the master. Even if the master is disrespectful, the subordinate will also be willing to. At the end of the sentence, the voice became lower and lower, and the last two words were so low that they could not be heard. Chu Ching Huang coughed lightly, go to sleep. Yes. Fu Kang lay back down again, pulled the blanket and covered it. It's summer, you're covered with a blanket, isn't it hot? I'm not hot. Oh, just keep covering it if it's not hot. Chu Ching Huang sighed softly and went to sleep. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 197. The night falls, everything is silent, the sky is dotted with stars twinkling, and the night wind is mixed with a bit of hot breath. Chen Hai ordered the palace servants to bring 2 basins of ice cubes. The emperor was sitting in the royal palace, looking at the pile of memorials in front of him, and the same questions as the queen mother came to his mind. Chen Hai. The slave is here. Do you think Tianyan's behavior in Renchao Palace today was abnormal? It's true. Chen Hai lowered his head and thought for a while before replying cautiously, His Third Highness has just been lifted from the ban. It stands to reason that he should be more cautious in his words and actions than before. Moreover, the Queen Mother has always loved the Third Highness the most, both emotionally and rationally. Your Highnesses should not lose their composure in front of the Queen Mother. The Emperor was silent for a moment. That's what he thought. Today in the Queen Mother's palace, he was so angry that he didn't even think about it. He only knew that Tianyan lost his temper and went crazy in front of so many people. He didn't have any princely demeanor and simply lost the face of the royal family. In anger, he had people drag him out and beat him, and even ordered him to be put into solitary confinement. But now he calmed down and thought about it. He also felt that Chu Tianyan's state today was really abnormal. The emperor was silent for a moment. What do you think the reason might be? My servant dare not say anything. You are forgiven. Yes, Chen Hai spoke more and more cautiously. There are always various dark ways to fight for favor in the palace. Although I can't guess who it is, under normal circumstances, His Highness should be in such a state that he has been under some kind of trance. Crazy drugs. After the words fell, the emperor's face instantly became extremely ugly. Fighting for favor, he said with an angry tone, are they fighting for favor? What they clearly want is the power and wealth that I can give them, and they are fighting for the position of crown prince and even the emperor in the future. They have been fighting since 20 years ago I started playing tricks and have been playing until now, without stopping for a moment. Chen Hai didn't dare to speak. Indeed, it didn't stop for a moment, and those who stopped had already gone to see the king of hell. The emperor sighed deeply, his eyebrows gloomy and unreadable. The weather is getting hotter and hotter now, but I suddenly feel the cold at high places. Looking at the court and the world, how many people can I trust? Your Majesty, please don't say that. Chen Hai lowered his head. Hasn't Her Royal Highness the Princess been behaving particularly well recently? The Emperor fell silent, his expression changing. After a moment, he looked up at Chen Hai's lowered head. Are you trying to comfort me? Slave doesn't dare. The great Ziki dynasty has many ministers of civil and military affairs. Among them are many young upstarts who have studied hard for 10 years and have passed the exam. Even including my sons, there is only one daughter that I can believe. The emperor sneered, should I be proud of it? Chen Hai lowered his eyebrows and remained silent. Qing Huang has an iron fist and a good brain. The emperor closed his eyes slightly, as if thinking about something. If I had had her courage back then, Ziki should be a completely new Ziki now. Your Majesty has done enough, Chen Hai said in a low voice, with a hint of heartache in his tone. If it hadn't been for the Lin family's trouble in the court and the great loss of 11 Qi's vitality, so many aristocratic families would not have formed cliques for personal gain. With the opportunity, the emperor will definitely create a prosperous era for Ziki. The emperor did not speak, but looked at the pile of memorials on the long case with a serious look. What do you think these memorials are? I don't dare to make random guesses. Recently, several ministers in the court have taken a look at the direction of the trend and believe that the queen and her son have the upper hand. Shang Jizi asked me to establish a crown prince. The emperor snorted coldly. Qing Huang is right, these sons of mine have no ability to govern the country. Who should I appoint? The eldest brother or the second child? Or just appoint Xiaju as the crown prince? Chen Hai was horrified. I don't dare to discuss matters concerning the crown prince. I didn't ask you to discuss it. The emperor glanced at him, and then leaned back on his chair tiredly. Establishing a prince is a big deal. If you don't do it right, it will ruin hundreds of years of 11 Qi's foundation. I have always wanted to wait and see what happens to these sons. Who has the ability, but they have been hiding in their turtle shells, not even having the courage to show off their abilities. Apart from getting into trouble and causing trouble all day long, no one has taken the initiative to share the government affairs for me. Each and every one of them still wants to be the prince. Speaking of this, I couldn't help but compare Qing Huang again. Look at them, and then look at Qing Huang. I really am. You said they have 1/10 of King Huang's courage and ability. Why haven't I established a prince yet? Chen Hai became more and more afraid to speak. It would be great if Qing Huang was born as a boy. The emperor couldn't help but feel confused again. If only she was born as a boy. Before. Chen Hai said cautiously, didn't Dongling also have a queen? The emperor's face changed slightly, and he slowly sat up straight, staring at Chen Hai with deep and unpredictable eyes. What did you say? Chen Hai knelt down in fear. Old slave, you deserve to die. The emperor's gaze with a hint of coercion fell on the top of his head, and the color in his eyes rolled. After a while, he calmly said, you mean, Qing Huang can be the heir? I don't dare. Chen Hai apologized again and again. I just couldn't see the emperor being so sad, so I spoke unscrupulously. I beg the emperor to forgive me for being so mean-mouthed. The emperor said nothing and slowly leaned back in his chair. Queen Dongling. Yes, Dongling's last term was the empress. Although most of the major affairs of the government were decided by the regent, the empress did remain the emperor safely for more than 10 years. And the prosperous age of Dongling began with the queen. The emperor closed his eyes, his mind filled with thoughts. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 198. The next morning, Chu Qing Huang just got up and heard Jinlan report that someone had come to the palace, saying that the queen had sent someone to tailor clothes for his highness and several servants. Tailoring clothes? Yes. Chu Qing Huang thought of the few people in the west courtyard who were dressed better than the rich and powerful, and said in a light tone, "Send someone over." Yes. Not long after, the Changchun Palace nanny brought people from the Shanghai Bureau to the East Upper Pavilion. There were 7 or 8 people in the group, and the specifications were not small. Everyone saluted according to the rules and said respectfully, "The Queen sympathizes with Her Highness the Princess's recent hard work for the country, and ordered this old servant to tailor a few new clothes for Her Highness the Princess." Chu Qing Huang hummed without emotion, "Come in." Everyone entered the palace one by one. Chu Qing Huang cooperated and stood while they measured her. After all, the palace paid for it, who would complain that they had too many clothes? As for the Queen's intention of actively showing goodwill, she knew it very well. This was just the first step of winning over, and the winning over could not be too obvious, otherwise it would easily cause the king's displeasure. "Your Highness," Nanny Gu said respectfully, "the emperor means that he wants to make a few for those in your backyard. Please ask the princess to call all the young masters over. We will measure them together and report back." Chu Qing Huang said calmly, "I have sent someone to call them. They will be here soon." "Yes." Fu Kang. Chu Qing Huang turned around and walked to the brocade couch and sat down, speaking calmly. "Yes. Stand over there and let them measure you." When Nanny Gu heard this, her eyes instantly fell on Fu Kang's face and she subconsciously began to look at him. The boy, about 17 or 18 years old, was handsome, with a good figure, a slender body, and a strong power hidden in his body. Nanny Gu was an old lady in the palace. She had seen countless people of all kinds over the years. The boy in front of her definitely did not look like an ordinary person, but a rare master. And judging from his expression at this moment, he was definitely not a servant in the backyard. Or, the princess was tired of those weak and beautiful young men recently, and forced a master to be her male lover? At this time, Fu Kang, who was forced to stretch his arms in the palace and was being touched by a group of strangers, stood stiffly, resisting the urge to kill someone with a palm. His restrained expression did look like he was forcing a good woman into prostitution. So Nanny Gu was more certain of her judgment, but she didn't dare to say anything. She just said to Chu Qing Huang, "Your Highness, can you make 2 robes for this young master?" 4 sets, Chu Qing Huang said. "Make 2 sets of black satin, with some dark bamboo patterns embroidered on the cuffs and hems, and 2 sets of dark red. Make 2 black and 2 white inner garments, all made of satin, and make 4 pairs of boots for him, with the colors and styles matching the robes." Nanny Gu listened respectfully and wrote down everything she said. The Queen had explained before coming here that she was not afraid of how many requests Her Highness the Princess made, but she was afraid that she would refuse. As long as she was willing to accept the Queen's kindness, it would be easier to win her over in the future. "Your Highness, I'm here." The lively voice of the young man suddenly sounded, and then Hong Yu, who was wearing a blue cloth shirt, jumped in. Seeing so many people in the hall, he seemed to be startled, and quickly retracted his feet that had already stepped in. He carefully searched around, and when he saw Chu Qing Huang sitting in front of the couch, he slowly walked in. "See Her Highness the Princess." Hong Yu bowed deeply. "I wonder why Her Highness asked me to come here." Chu Qing Huang looked at his blue shirt that had been washed white, and wanted to know where he got this clothes from. "Where are the others?" "Mr. Wen is reviewing his lessons, and Mr. Qi went to the military camp." Hong Yu was very obedient and answered every question. "Mr. Chu and Mr. Shen went out. So you and Wen Zhan are the only 2 people left in the west courtyard?" "Yes." Gu Ma listened to their conversation and was slightly shocked. 1 went to the military camp, and 2 went out? These servants in the backyard of Her Highness the Princess are so free? Do they not know a little bit of rules, or is the princess too indulgent to them? The queen wants to make clothes for you. Go over there and stand there, and let them measure you. Clothes. Hong Yu turned to look at the people from the palace and coughed lightly. This young master likes red, and the style should be more elegant, so that you can feel like a banished immortal when wearing it. The banished immortal in red. Chu Qing Huang raised her eyebrows and poured a basin of cold water slowly. The red one should be a demon. Hong Yu felt wronged. Is there a demon as beautiful as her? Madame Gu had a complicated expression. Is this how Her Royal Highness the Princess gets along with the servant in the backyard? Anyway, whether it's a demon or a banished immortal, I want red ones, the more elegant the better. Hong Yu raised his arms. Come on, measure me, make more sets, use better materials, and if you can give me a few sets of fine jade pendants, it would be even better. Madame Gu frowned slightly, wanting to tell him that a servant shouldn't have so many requirements, and the fine materials and jade pendants are standard for princes and nobles, and a mere servant is not qualified to be so demanding. But the princess didn't say anything, so Madame Gu didn't say anything either. She was different from the two maids around concubine Duan, and she would never make enemies for her master outside. Even if the ignorant boy in front of her kept crossing the line, she shouldn't teach him a lesson. Your Highness the Princess, she turned to look at Chu Qing Huang, when will the other young masters come back? They are not short of clothes, so don't pay attention to them, Chu Qing Huang said, just make them for Fukang and Hong Yu. Yes. She would do whatever Her Royal Highness the Princess said and would never refute a word. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 199. But after returning to the palace, Grandma Gu started chatting directly and reported everything she saw and heard in the eldest princess's mansion to the queen in detail. Her Royal Highness the Princess has just accepted a new servant named Fukang, and Gu brought a cup of freshly brewed tea to the queen. From a slave's point of view, this servant should be very skilled, and it looked like she was forced by the eldest princess. Her expression was very stiff and she looked unwilling. Fukang, the queen frowned. This name sounds a bit familiar. Grandma Gu thought for a while. I have never heard of it. The queen thought about it for a moment, but couldn't remember who it was, so she simply stopped thinking about it. Did you just say that the male favorites in the eldest princess's mansion are not in the mansion? Yes, Grandma Gu nodded. All three male pets have gone out, and one of them seems to have gone to the military camp. Don't you think this is abnormal? How can the male favorites be qualified to go to the military camp? Besides, Her Royal Highness the eldest princess has a cold temper. He is ruthless and so indulgent in controlling the male pet in the backyard. No matter what I think, it is unreasonable. It is indeed unreasonable. The queen frowned and thought deeply. I have not paid much attention to Zioki's backyard. Now it seems that it is necessary to find out more. Although men are different from women, since they have entered the backyard of the eldest princess's house, they are the same as concubines. They are supposed to stay at home and abide by the rules of favoring men. Besides, Chu Qing Huang has such a violent temper. How could those few people leave the house so openly without her permission? There must be something hidden in this matter. It's not convenient for the empress outside the palace to interfere. It's better for the princess to have more contact with Her Royal Highness the eldest princess, Grandma Gu suggested. The princess has nothing to do recently. She can occasionally go to the eldest princess's mansion, or invite Her Royal Highness the eldest princess. Go to Prince Xian's mansion to enjoy flowers, have tea, and connect with the royal family members. The queen thought it was feasible, nodded and said, later, you will convey my decree and let Princess Xian enter the palace. I will explain some things to her. Yes. The Ling family and the Feng family have both lost power. This is a good time to ask the emperor to appoint a heir apparent. We must not offend Chu Qing Huang, the queen warned. No matter when and where, the people in Changchun Palace can only when you say something good about the eldest princess, you must never say anything bad about her. I understand. Grandma Gu smiled. In fact, it is not difficult to win over the eldest princess. I went to the princess's mansion today and found out that the eldest princess is really conniving at the servants in the backyard. If the princess can do what she likes, it should be easy to coax the eldest princess. Just like him. The queen nodded slowly, obviously agreeing with her statement. Yes, if you want to win over someone, you have to do what they like. With Chu Qinghuang's temper, you have to rely on coaxing, and you can't be tough with her. Aren't Concubine Duan and the Feng family a lesson from the past? Speaking of which, I should also thank Concubine Duan. The queen leaned on the phoenix couch and smiled gracefully. If she hadn't taken the initiative to push my daughter so far away, I wouldn't have found a chance to win over Qing Huang. After all, who can easily destroy the relationship between mother and daughter? It's a pity that Concubine Duan is too stupid. Years of pampering made her self-righteous, thinking that her biological daughter should listen to her. It's a pity that no one can control King Huang's temper. Concubine Duan's miscalculation finally succeeded her, and the queen secretly decided that she would never follow Concubine Duan's old path. Thinking of this, she warned her in detail. The Prince Xian's mansion also told them, from Prince Xian and Princess to the servants and servants, no one is allowed to mess with the eldest princess. Even if the eldest princess loses her temper in Prince Xian's mansion, let them. They will also be coaxed by me, and if necessary, they will put their faces in front of the eldest princess and let them be beaten. If they dare to let the eldest princess bring her anger out of the palace, their lives will not be enough to kill them. Yes, Grandma Gu memorized it carefully. Mother, don't worry. Window. Tabula equals window. Tabula. Tabula.push, mode, thumbspeed -01, container, tabula below article thumbnail -300x250, placement, below article thumbnail -300x250, target. Type, mix. After the divorce, the princess was forced to raise a sickly villain. Author, Nan Huang. Chapter 200. On the 6th day of the 6th lunar month, the king of Zhenbei arrived. 3,000 guards stayed outside the inner city gate, and he only brought his son Qi Yun and daughter Qi Lan, as well as 4 personal guards, to the palace to meet the emperor. Your Highness, my minister Qi Xiong, with my legitimate son Qi Yun and my daughter Qi Lan, wishes the emperor a long life. Long live the emperor! The emperor looked up, a gentle smile appeared on his face for a moment, and he stood up, walked around the imperial desk, and personally reached out to help the king of Zhenbei. My dear minister, please stand up quickly. How could the king of Zhenbei dare to let him help him? He stepped back and bowed, saying, "Thank you, your majesty." After completing the etiquette between the monarch and his subjects in a proper manner, the king of Zhenbei stood up. He was dressed in a vassal king's robe, which made him look strong and majestic. He was around 40 years old, which was the prime of a man's life. He had lived in a fiefdom for a long time and held military power, which made him have the momentum of being in a high position. Even when facing the emperor, his momentum was not inferior at all. Of course, as a subject, he still had to be respectful, otherwise it would be a provocation to the king. The emperor ordered loudly, "Come here, please take a seat." Yes. Zhenbei Wang thanked him again, "Your Majesty, please." The emperor returned to the dragon throne and sat down. Zhenbei Wang was not polite. After thanking him, he lifted his robe and sat down. His 2 children stood obediently behind him. "I feel deeply guilty for not educating my son properly." The emperor smiled bitterly, looking self-blaming and guilty. "Your Highness guarded the Mayanbei area for me, but I couldn't even protect your daughter. I am really ashamed." "Your Majesty, you are too kind." The king of Zhenbei stood up and saluted. "My daughter is the princess of Jin." The accidental death was something no one expected. This matter has nothing to do with your majesty. Your majesty does not need to blame yourself for it. The emperor glanced at him and nodded slowly. Later, I will let Tianyan, the rebellious son, apologize to the prince and explain the whole story. The king of Zhenbei bowed. Thank you, your majesty. Although Chu Tianyan is a prince, he is also his son-in-law. His daughter died at the hands of his son-in-law. It is reasonable for him, as a father-in-law, to give an explanation, but he must not act as a victim in front of the emperor. Your Excellency has come a long way and must be exhausted. I have already asked someone to prepare a banquet to welcome you. After the emperor finished speaking, he turned around and told Chen Hai, "Is the banquet ready?" "It's ready, and the ministers are waiting in Guangyang Palace." Chen Hai bowed and replied, "Your Majesty and the prince, please move." The emperor nodded, stood up and said, "Your Excellency, please go together." The king of Zhenbei also stood up. "Yes." The emperor glanced at Qi Yun, who was dressed in brocade and jade belt, and smiled as he walked. After not seeing each other for several years, Qi Yun has grown up so much. He is handsome and talented. It is true that a tiger father has a good son. Your Majesty is too kind. The king of Zhenbei followed with a smile. I only have this one legitimate son. The princess spoils him too much on weekdays. This time I brought him to the capital, just to let the emperor teach him a lesson and let him learn some rules. The emperor smiled and said, "It's a pity that I don't have a daughter of marriageable age, otherwise I will definitely marry the princess to Qi Yun." This is the emperor's favor. Even if he will not really marry the princess to him, it is still possible to win people's hearts by saying a few polite words. The king of Zhenbei even said he dared not. It's not that the emperor has no daughter of marriageable age. On the contrary, he now has two daughters who are of marriageable age. It's just that the sixth princess is staying with her mother at this time, and the emperor does not want to release her for the time being. And the seventh princess Chu Qinghuang is something that Qi Yun can't even think about. The emperor will not consider it at all. The two old foxes went back and forth, showing weakness in their words and deeds, silently minimizing the possible risks. On the surface, it looked like a harmonious picture of mutual trust and love between the monarch and his subjects. The two walked along the palace corridor for a while, and the emperor pondered and said, "I remember that Prince Rong has a daughter who is gentle, knowledgeable, and sensible. I will summon her to the palace tonight to ask her." The king of Zhenbei thanked him respectfully and understood the emperor's intention. On the way here, he had already found out the reason why the third prince killed his daughter. At least on the surface, it was indeed his daughter who was at fault first, so the king of Zhenbei could not come with the attitude of raising an army to accuse him. The imperial power is supreme, and the majesty of the emperor cannot be offended. As a minister, even if he holds great power and even if he has a fief in his hands, he must never be rude to the monarch, so no matter what the truth is, even if the third prince is really at fault first, his attitude must remain humble and show an attitude of the monarch wants the minister to die, and the minister has to die. In this way, the emperor would naturally feel guilty and want to compensate him. His daughter has already been lost, and asking for justice in a domineering manner will only make the emperor hate him. Even if he gives him some explanation now, he will definitely find a way to save face in the future. Taking the initiative to show weakness will bring unexpected benefits.